Now, sometimes when you're pummeling, again, particularly when your partner or opponent is fatigued, they may tend to lower their head. If their head gets low enough, instead of trying to dig underneath and be jacking my opponent up, I'm going to pop them down. So as I'm digging in here, Colby's head is up pretty good right now, and I'm going to be thinking of things more like trying to get body locks, slide-bys, doubles from this position if I can. However, if I sense his head is down, as we're transitioning in, I'm going to pull his head down. And you develop a sensitivity to when his head is up too high to do that, and I want to attack relatively low, or when his head is down lower, I want to come up top and snap him down. So we're going back and forth. Now look at from this arm here, as he's digging in here, and this arm here, as he's digging in, I can pull it to the side, okay, and shuck him that way. Alternatively, I can go right to head and arm position here. So his head is low, and I sense that as we're digging, and sometimes too, as you're digging up, your opponent is uncomfortable in trying to lower his level to keep his arms down as you're jacking him up. His head comes down somewhat. That's a point to snap the head down. So we're digging. I notice Colby's head comes down a little low here. I go to head and arm position. Naturally, I've got to be cautious that I don't throw Colby into a double leg attack. So when I do this, I'm not going to pull him into my legs. I'm going to pull him to the side as I step to the side. Or if I pull him straight in, I'm going to keep my abdomen low as he comes in to block him from attacking, increasingly going low as I get the head and arm. Or sometimes, just the head and the chin, and we went over that type of grip in an earlier instructional. So you got a few options here. The basic notion is if my opponent's head starts getting low, especially when they're fatigued, pop down. If you get your head underneath him, keep your abdomen, your sternum right over his head. Another option is an inside trip. I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail on the instructional on throwing foot sweeps and trips. But I want to get across to you that there's a good inside trip from this type of position when you're pummeling. And I prefer the inside trip actually when I'm a little bit further away, as opposed to just more traditional chest-to-chest type pummeling. But it's available here as well. What I'm going to do with my foot, if you're still here, Colby, keep your feet a little further apart for not just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to come in like this with my foot. I want you to watch as my lower body. There's two basic things I'm thinking about. What I'm doing from my waist down and what I'm doing from my waist up. From my waist down. I cannot do a good inside trip if my supporting leg is too far away. Therefore, when I'm pummeling, although I'm close, I'm still going to typically hop in a little bit to cut the distance. I'll have a poor inside trip if I'm too far away. If I'm closer here, I'm typically going to hop in to be able to come in a little closer. The closer I am, the better. The next thing is it's important that I lower my level from here. And I'm not in pummeling position here now, but I just want to get the basic position here. Widen your legs a little bit more, Colby. From here. So from here, I'm going to hop in. Notice this foot comes up. I want you to see this foot here. It comes around in a semicircle. And I want you to notice the way my hips go. I hop in from here to get close so I can get close contact. I'm going to bring this foot here through. Notice where my hips are pointed, that direction right now. But when I come through, and I'm going to stay a little shallow, so I'm not going to come all the way through. Notice where my hips are pointed there. Notice how I have my level low here. I'm on my knees, in fact. So when I'm in here, I'm going to hop in. Notice my hips. I'm in here with my opponent. I skip in, and I go in a circle. Notice my hips are here. Now they're pointed in that direction. That's basically what I'm doing with my lower body. It's important that when I step in or skip in, I'm not real upright. I'm going to be low. Because when I'm low here, I'm going to be able to reach through the leg better. And you'll notice too, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to come like this, like out and in. It's going to be a circle. I'm not going to reach with my heel, grab his leg, and try to pull it in like a hamstring curl. It's a circle type situation. And keep my hips pretty low. My upper body is going to want to clamp down. What side does it want to clamp down on? It wants to clamp down if I'm attacking with this leg against his leg here. I want to freeze this part of his upper body up. Because as I'm kicking this leg out, I want to put tremendous weight on this side so that he'll topple down. So as we're coming in here, digging back and forth, one of the times we're going to come in this position here. Of course, in more of the grappling martial arts, I'm probably going to end up in guard in that situation. But this is a way for me to get my opponent down to the mat if I need to. Okay? And the other thing to think about is when I come in tight with my body, and sometimes I'll lock up, sometimes I just clamp down hard. Here, I'm tight around the body that doesn't have the arm, my underhook side. On the overhook side here, I just clamp down. I'm pushing with my head, tight with my body this way, and down. Prying with my head as I come through. Now I also want you to notice something here too. When I go for it, when I do eventually come in here, you'll notice that while this is the underhook side here, I don't transition my feet, because if I do, then what happens? It's harder for me to get in. So typically, as he's digging in, now instead of transitioning this way, how I was talking about pummeling, same side arm is attacking the underhook as the same side leg that's pushing. I'm going to delay that because I'm just going to skip in. The other thing you'll notice too is while I hit him straight, because of my momentum, I end up going at an angle. Now, again, I'll be going over this in more detail in the instructional on throwing foot sweeps and trips. But in fact, I tend to prefer, just to mention this now, I tend to prefer the inside trip for more this double inside position here. So I'll be working, I'll be popping here, and then that gives me an opportunity to hop in and to go for that type of an attack. And I'll go over that in more detail, but just be aware now that you have an inside trip from that pummeling type position. Now sometimes, as you're pummeling, you may get a little bit of distance and your grip may transition, for example, to double underhooks. And actually I'm going to go off on a brief tangent here that I think is important. As I'm going through all the setups that we went up in the very first instructional, and now, which were mostly from open type stance, and then I talked about attacking the legs in another instructional. I talked about attacking up top, the head, in another instructional. And now we're at a very close range of pummeling. It's really crucial that you're able to blend all of that together. Against a good opponent, it's simply not sufficient just to have good attacks from this range. Likewise, it's not sufficient to simply be effective only when you're tied up with your opponent. Similarly, against your best opponent, it's difficult if all you're proficient at is attacking the legs. Similarly, if all you're good at is popping the head down and trying to snap them down or get to a head and arm, that's also difficult against most opponents. You need to be able to transition. When the legs are available, you can attack the legs. If they're not because your opponent's lower, you attack the head. If I enjoy or I'm most proficient being outside, that's where I want to be. But there are definitely going to be times when my opponent ties me up, and it's critical and crucial that I can be proficient in this position too. So you need to be able to transition back and forth, legs to head, outside to close distance type tie-ups and attacks. That's crucial. And along those lines, sometimes as you're pummeling, you may change your position somewhat. And from this position where I get double underhooks, there's a duck under. I can do the duck under simply when I have double underhooks. Or sometimes, as we're transitioning here, I may be pulling Colby's head out. We dig around a little bit. I get to this position, and I have the potential for a duck under, especially because we're close range and we're pummeling, we're probably pushing into each other. So I feel Colby pushing in. I'm just going to step, and I'm going to duck from here. Up. I get very low. It's almost the same type of motion and movement as the slide by. Step, down. I step inside his foot, I bisect his feet, ankle to ankle, drop down, and come up. My angle isn't like this. Just like with the slide by, you'll notice the angle of my back is pretty upright and vertical, just like with the slide by. This isn't an attack where I'm coming here and there's an angle at my body. It's down and up, just like the slide by. So, as we were transitioning back and forth, if I find myself in this type of a position, or even in this type of a position, collar tie and inside control, as I feel my partner or opponent pushing in, that gives me a little bit of time to step, and I kind of lift this up a little bit, and I put my chest to his body here, up, and come around. Down, up. Again, if he's pushing into me, and I go underneath him, he's going to have a tendency to continue to move forward. I come up, I'm going to kind of be behind him, or at least off to his side. So again, double inside control, and a collar tie here, and I've got a duck under situation. And sometimes, like I said, as I'm transitioning here, I pop here, Colby comes out, and I duck. All of this stuff, when you develop proficiency at it, will be in kind of dynamic motion, one thing going to another. And just like in stand-up, if you're proficient at that, or more traditional jiu-jitsu, as you get more proficient, moves tend to flow from one thing to the next. And as you're learning wrestling, everything is going to seem very mechanical at first, but after a while you'll develop that fluidity, and that's part of the goal in all of this, is to be able to transition back and forth. So again, a duck under position, pretty much like a slide by in terms of footwork. It's crucial when I duck. I'm not coming down like this like I'm attacking a double, like my angle is different. You'll notice too my feet, my foot position is much different. If I attack a double, I'm just lowering my level or I'm stepping, whereas with the duck under here, I'm going to step to his foot, drop. Foot, drop. Knee to my butt to my heels here, and I'm going to come up. From this position, and of course I get control around him. Frequently, if he's really pushing in hard, my opponent may go down to the mat, and of course I just want to keep on top of him as best as possible to finish the technique to the mat. Sometimes with some opponents, there's a tendency for them to be pretty quick in terms of responding with their feet so that you can't get to that step position with their foot in between yours. If your opponent steps back, you're going to do the duck in a little bit different way, or at least you have an option to. So sometimes I can approach the duck in terms of coming very low here, down and up. Another possibility is to feign a duck to one side here. Now, when your opponent steps back, you're going to step again with that foot, and I want you to notice how I loaded him up here. Ankle to ankle, knee to knee, deep here, loading his weight up in this position here. Bring him down. So this is a move where, in a way, I'm feigning the duck, and you'll notice I maintain a much higher level than I did initially for that first attack that I showed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop in or step in very quickly with the second attack to cut the distance. So I fake here, my opponent pulls his leg back, From here, I'm going to come to this position here. My weight is down, ankle to ankle, knee to knee, and I'm going to bring him down from this position.